The episode 5 of season 4 isn't just a sneak peek, it's a warning. A shift is coming. And if you've been watching closely, you'll know this isn't just another episode, it's the calm before the storm. What seems small at first might actually be the beginning of everything unraveling. Let's dive deep into what this promo really reveals, and why it's setting the stage for something far greater than we expected. As the new promo begins, there's a stillness that's hard to explain. It doesn't scream for attention, but it whispers something powerful. You immediately feel the weight of everything that's happened before, and you know that the characters are stepping into unfamiliar territory. What makes this promo so fascinating isn't just the dialogue or the setting, it's what's not being said. It's the expressions, the hesitation, the silent tension. That's where the real story is hiding. And in this episode, everything from the past 4 episodes starts pressing down on the disciples in a new, more personal way. At the center of it all, we see growing pressure between responsibility and fear. The disciples are moving from one town to another, trying to remain hidden, yet their presence continues to draw attention. The promo shows brief glimpses of tired eyes, cautious steps, and conversations that feel heavier than usual. It's clear something is stirring not just outside among the crowds or the religious leaders, but within the group itself. There's a change happening in their hearts. You can see it in Peter's face. He's no longer just a fisherman following a teacher, he's a man wrestling with what it actually means to lead when everything is uncertain. And that's going to be tested in this episode like never before. The promo hints at deeper moments of conflict. Not loud arguments, but quiet disappointments. People questioning themselves. Judas especially appears more distracted, more watchful than before. If you followed his arc from previous episodes, you know this isn't random. Every decision he's making seems to carry a double meaning now. When he smiles, it doesn't reach his eyes anymore. And in this promo, you'll notice the way he clutches the money bag a little tighter, like he's trying to convince himself he still believes in the mission. Another surprising detail is the way Matthew is shown. There's a shot of him looking over coins, just for a second, but that's enough. Because if you've paid attention, you'll remember that Matthew has been trying to stay far from anything involving money or control. So the fact that he's involved now, well, it says something. Maybe there's no more avoiding the past. Maybe the disciples are starting to feel the cracks in the group. And Matthew, the one who was always about numbers and structure, might be the first to notice when things aren't adding up anymore. And while all this is happening, there's a shadow of the Sanhedrin looming in the background. The promo flashes quickly between locations. But there's a reason why. The religious leaders are more alert now, more aggressive. We see a room filled with robes and stern faces, and even though we don't hear what's being said, the atmosphere is loud enough. They're preparing, watching, planning. And this tells us something huge. Jesus is no longer just a name being whispered around Judea. He's a target. But here's what makes this promo stand out. It doesn't give away the major event of the episode, but it feels like it's leading us towards something irreversible. There's a sense of finality that hovers over every frame. Like once we cross this line in episode 5, we can't go back. That's why it's so important to pay attention, because what's coming next might change everything, not just for the characters in the story, but for how we understand the message of the entire season. This first part of the promo sets the tone not through action, but through atmosphere. And that's what makes it so effective. You're not just watching something unfold, you're being pulled into a deeper tension. One that asks the question, when the silence breaks, who will still be standing? As we move deeper into the promo, the tone subtly shifts. The tension builds, but not in an explosive way. It grows beneath the surface, like a rising tide no one can stop. You start to feel it in the way the disciples glance at each other, in the way they speak with hesitation, weighing every word. What we're seeing is not just another journey on foot or another visit to a town. This is the beginning of separation, emotional, spiritual, and eventually physical. The unity that once felt unshakable is starting to stretch under pressure. And episode 5 looks like the breaking point. The promo shows Peter and Jesus walking alone, side by side, but something's different. Peter isn't nodding along as usual. He's thinking too hard. His brow is tight, his mouth pressed into a line. It's the face of a man holding something in, unsure if he can carry it much longer. Jesus, as always, is calm, steady, but even he seems more quiet than usual, as if preparing for a moment that hasn't yet arrived. This dynamic alone tells us everything. Peter is burdened by leadership, and Jesus is watching it all unfold, knowing what's to come. Then we catch a brief but loaded scene. Judas walking past the others, pausing slightly before entering a room alone. The camera doesn't follow him, but the moment lingers. That pause, it means something. It's hesitation. It's guilt. It's a man starting to feel the weight of secrets. We don't know yet what Judas is hiding, but the promo gives us just enough to wonder if even he knows anymore. What began as simple disagreements or doubts are beginning to fester inside him. This isn't just foreshadowing, it's emotional groundwork. The Chosen has always built betrayal slowly, and here in episode 5, we start to feel its first cold breath. And as the promo continues, we're brought back to the Sanhedrin. This time, the voices are louder, the body language more severe. Shmuel is front and center, and it's clear his obsession with Jesus is reaching new heights. He's no longer simply trying to warn people, he's mobilizing. His conversations with other leaders are sharper, more urgent, and there's a specific moment where his voice raises in anger. Not yelling, not unhinged, but frustrated, like a man who can't understand why no one else sees what he sees. This tells us a lot. Shmuel believes he's protecting his people. He thinks he's on the right side of history, and that makes him dangerous. Because when someone thinks they're righteous, they stop asking questions. They stop listening. The promo leans into this idea hard. We see glances exchanged between Sadducees and Pharisees, small political moves being made, and an undertone of strategy beginning to form. It's not a full-blown plan yet, but it's close. And once the Sanhedrin starts to agree on anything, things begin to move fast. But the real emotional punch in this section comes not from politics, but from the quieter scenes, like when Mary Magdalene sits alone at a fire, holding something tightly in her hands. The promo doesn't show what it is, but the look in her eyes says it all. Grief, reflection, fear. It reminds us that even though the disciples are following Jesus with their feet, their hearts are still recovering from loss, trauma, and confusion. And it's not just her. There's a short scene of Thomas looking away as someone speaks to him. He's not distracted. He's wounded. You get the sense that some conversations are happening off-screen, the kind we only feel through body language. That's the brilliance of this promo. It makes us sense the emotional noise even in silence. Another subtle but meaningful moment is when we see a group of the disciples walking ahead of Jesus for the first time. It seems like a small change, but symbolically, it's massive. They're not just following blindly anymore. They're starting to question, to lead, to make choices without waiting for instruction. And that brings both strength and danger. The closer they get to the heart of their mission, the more they realize how difficult the road truly is. And now, each step is heavier. Each choice feels final. That's what episode 5 is setting up. Not a major miracle or a confrontation, but the slow tightening of the net around the group, emotionally, spiritually, and politically. This section of the promo ends with a scene that doesn't offer answers, but leaves you unsettled. A night scene, shadows dancing across the wall, the sound of footsteps in the distance. We don't see who it is or where they're going, but we know something is moving, something is coming. And episode 5 is where we start to lose the sense of safety we've had in previous episodes. We're no longer watching the rise of a movement, we're watching the edge of something dangerous. And the next step might take us to a place we can't return from. As the promo continues, what once felt like subtle warnings begin to sharpen into clear threats. There's no denying it anymore. Tensions are no longer just brewing, they're boiling. The disciples can feel it. The crowd can sense it. And in this episode, the line between support and opposition begins to blur in a terrifying way. In one of the more striking glimpses, we see a crowd forming. Not cheering, not celebrating, but murmuring. Eyes darting, whispers rising. This is different from the joyful gatherings we've seen before. This time, the people aren't just curious. They're suspicious. And that change in tone signals a massive shift. The promo doesn't show a riot or a violent moment, but it doesn't have to. The energy says it all. Jesus is no longer just seen as a healer or teacher. He's becoming a threat to those in power and a puzzle to those who once followed him freely. We then cut to a scene that might be the most loaded with meaning yet. A brief interaction between Jesus and Judas. It's not dramatic, not confrontational, but the weight behind it is undeniable. Judas looks at Jesus with a tight jaw, like someone who has something to say but swallows it instead. Jesus, in return, holds his gaze for just a moment too long. That stare, it's quiet, kind, but piercing, as if Jesus knows exactly what Judas is struggling with. And Judas, in that moment, knows it too. The silence between them speaks louder than any words. This moment is a turning point, even if nothing is said. It's a fork in the road, and we're watching the first steps toward betrayal being made, not in action, but in thought. And that's the terrifying part. Because betrayals don't begin with betrayal. They begin with small doubts, unanswered questions, unresolved pride. And this promo shows that Judas is already halfway down that path. But it's not just Judas feeling the pressure. Simon the Zealot is shown briefly, standing alone, watching as the others talk in a small group. He's not isolated physically, but emotionally. His background, his mission, his struggle with control, it's all starting to rise to the surface again. You can see it in the way he watches the group, with a kind of anxious patience. Like he's waiting for something to go wrong, like he doesn't quite believe things can hold together much longer. And maybe he's right, because the promo hints that disagreements are beginning to rise. Not explosive fights, but subtle misalignments. The kind that don't happen loudly, but shake everything from the inside out. Meanwhile, the Sanhedrin is no longer just talking. In this part of the promo, we get our first real glimpse of action. A messenger being sent, a plan being drafted, an order being written. It's fast, blurry, but unmistakable. Something official is about to happen. Whether it's an arrest, a public statement, or a trap, we're not told. But we're not supposed to be. The suspense is the point, and the fact that we're not given answers only makes it more unsettling. This is how The Chosen builds its tension, by letting the audience feel the weight of what's coming before it ever arrives. Then we see something unexpected. Mary, the mother of Jesus, looking directly at her son during a quiet moment. It's a tender scene, but her eyes are full of worry. It's not the worry of a moment, it's the kind that builds over time. The kind of worry only a mother carries when she knows the world is changing around her child and she can do nothing to stop it. That look says everything. She knows the path ahead isn't safe. She knows what the whispers mean. And in that brief frame, she reminds us that this isn't just a story of miracles and teachings, it's also a story of sacrifice and fear, of watching someone you love walk into danger while you remain helpless on the sidelines. In the final frames of this section, there's a moment that nearly passes unnoticed. A group of Roman soldiers watching from a distance. They're not moving, not speaking, just watching. That's all. But that's what makes it powerful. The eyes of Rome are now locked on Jesus and his followers. And once that happens, nothing stays simple. The combination of religious unrest, growing influence, and political tension is becoming too much to ignore. The promo doesn't need to spell it out. We know. The gears of opposition are turning, and episode 5 is where the machinery starts to grind. And yet, amid all this tension, Jesus remains calm. That's what unsettles everyone the most. While the disciples are growing anxious, while the crowds begin to shift, while the leaders scheme and the soldiers lurk, he walks forward without fear. That kind of peace can either comfort or disturb, depending on where your heart stands. For those who follow him, it's a sign of hope. For those who oppose him, it's a warning. And for those who are unsure, like many in the promo, it's a mystery too great to ignore. That's what this episode captures so perfectly. Not just the events, but the atmosphere. Now, as we shift into the final build-up shown in the promo, a clear emotional weight settles over every scene. The colors are darker, the music more tense, and the expressions on the disciples' faces are heavier. This isn't just another step in the journey, this is the moment where things begin to tilt. The center of gravity is shifting. Everything we've come to know about the group's unity, about their sense of purpose and direction, starts to get tested in deeper ways. What's interesting is that the promo doesn't lean on loud conflict or sudden betrayals. It leans on something even more uncomfortable: silence, hesitation, distance. When the disciples used to walk in tight formation, they now spread out. Conversations that used to be loud and excited are now muted and cautious. You begin to feel the emotional separation forming, like a fog settling between them. The road ahead is no longer just difficult, it's dangerous, and they can feel it creeping closer with every step. In one moment, we catch a glimpse of Andrew, usually the one who is eager, trusting, willing to believe in miracles. But this time, he looks shaken. He speaks to someone, maybe Jesus, maybe one of the others, but his words are rushed, almost panicked. His hands move as if trying to explain something he barely understands himself. And that's the point. Andrew represents the tension between faith and fear. He wants to believe that everything will be okay. He wants to trust. But he's beginning to see that following Jesus doesn't mean comfort. It means risk. And the closer they get to the heart of the mission, the more real that risk becomes. That's something all the disciples are grappling with now, but Andrew wears it openly, reminding us of just how human they all are. Then we get a powerful moment of contrast. Jesus alone. Just for a second, standing at a distance while the others talk among themselves. He's not excluded, he's observing. And this moment is chilling, not because of anything dramatic, but because of the weight of what's unseen. Jesus is watching his followers struggle, knowing what lies ahead, knowing who will fall away, who will betray, who will run. And yet, he remains present. This quiet endurance is what defines the tone of episode 5. It's not about immediate confrontation, but about enduring the slow unraveling. Jesus isn't just teaching them anymore. He's preparing them. For what? They don't fully understand. But we, the viewers, can see it coming, and it makes every look, every pause, every word spoken in this promo carry double the weight. Another major shift in tone happens when the promo flashes back to the Sanhedrin, this time more intense, more deliberate. The debate between Pharisees and Sadducees continues, but it's no longer just theological. Now it's political. It's personal. Shmuel's voice is raised again, but now there's anger in it. Desperation. He knows time is running out. The longer they wait, the stronger Jesus becomes in the eyes of the people. And what's even more unsettling is how some of the other leaders start nodding. Not in agreement with the theology, but in agreement with the threat. Jesus is becoming more than just a religious concern. He's becoming a force they can't control. And control is what they've always wanted. So the promo shows something terrifying. Unity among the Sanhedrin. Not full agreement, but movement, alignment. That's all it takes. Once the religious leaders align with political ambition, decisions start getting made. And those decisions will come for Jesus soon. Amidst this chaos, we're brought back to one final emotional anchor. Mary Magdalene again, this time not alone. She speaks with another woman, possibly Rama or Mother Mary, and the conversation is tense but loving. This scene reminds us of the quiet strength of the women in this story. While the men wrestle with pride, leadership, and identity, the women are processing everything at a deeper emotional level. They feel the danger, they carry the grief. They notice the little changes, the things left unsaid. And this promo wisely gives us just a few seconds of their dialogue, enough to feel the sadness and the resolve in their words. They know the group is being watched. They know something is closing in, but they also know they must continue. Their faith is quiet but steady, and that adds a necessary contrast to the louder, more chaotic moments building around them. Then, perhaps the most foreboding moment of the entire promo, a shot of Jesus walking through a narrow path, his shadow cast long and dark behind him. The walls are tight, the space is narrow. It's a metaphor clearly. The path is getting smaller, the choices fewer, the direction more fixed. Jesus is moving forward and nothing will stop him. Not fear, not politics, not betrayal. He knows what's coming and still he walks. That's the heartbeat of episode 5. It's not about escape, it's not about safety. It's about obedience in the face